right. So we'll try to do something a little different. We often do this as an interactive exercise, bringing everybody in. This is a huge group to do that with, so what I've got instead is maybe a prepared dashboard that we can all look at and then have access to. A number of you guys have been in and out of the various training sessions, and I think we've got everybody added into the New Relic University training account, where you'll find this dashboard along with a couple of others that I'll show you. If you're not in there, maybe you can partner with somebody near you that does already have access. And if you really don't have access, please come see me afterwards. We'll try to get you added into that account so that you can. A couple people I would love to copy that dashboard or copy that widget or see that again. And so that's the intent of getting you guys into those accounts and have a look. It wouldn't be a New Relic talk here at FutureStack without the safe harbor slide. I think hopefully everybody's seen that enough. And again, to point out, if you're uncomfortable with your email address being shared, because you're all admins in this account, you can go to that admin screen and see everybody else's email. So if that makes you uncomfortable, please let us know. We'll get you out of that account, and we'll send you over to Hotmail and create a new Hotmail account. This is a big one, right? So this notion of analytics everywhere. Yes, I want to get into NRQL hacking, but I also want to point out that metric charts are now pinnable in Insights, right? And that does change some of the way that we think about Insights. Insights has traditionally been an event store for us. The ability to take these metric charts, metric data, and view that data alongside of our event data is big. I don't want to undersell how important that is. And how that can change a number of dashboards. I don't have any specific advice, right? Adding metrics is new, and there are lots of fun things that we want to do to expand the metric charts, multiple axes and stacked metrics. I'll leave all that to the product manager and have you guys have a conversation with Henry about where Insights can go in the future with these metric charts. But I did want to point this out. It's an exciting feature for us, and I think you too as well. I debate whether or not this is important to people, but it comes up as we've thought about Insights, right? There's metric data and then event data, and does it matter? How are these things different? Metric data tends to be easier for us to store. It allows a greater aggregation component for us, whereas the event data tends to be the minute, detailed data instead. Event data is part of all of our agents now. All the agents are producing transactions, or in browser, we're producing page views, and those all result in events. Metric data is also collected at time slice values. So there's a time component to this, but the time component is very different. With a metric time slice, we're really thinking about a from and to zone, and that fits into our agents that are uploading these metrics on 1-minute boundaries. Event data comes in immediately and has a timestamp, so it has a very specific timestamp to it. So I don't mean to imply one is more important than the other, but they're both very different. And so when you think about metric and event data on a dashboard, and why can't I Facet on all my metric data, and why can't I use a universal time picker? It's because of some of the underlying differences in the data below it. We're going to try and build some different widgets in Insights here, and I hope to impress upon you that it's very easy to do. It's something that we can all do. A number of us have been into the celebrity dashboards just a minute ago and saw some of those. I'm not going to show you anything that you wouldn't have seen in the celebrity dashboards, right? A lot of these widgets are answering questions for us, and it's not, again, necessarily about the widget as much as it is about the question that it's answering for you. A couple of the presenters, either in that celebrity dashboard or throughout, have said, right, I think we heard it in the keynote this morning, that having lots of data doesn't solve problems for you. It's knowing how to ask the right questions about the data. In that sense, that's what Insights is designed to help us do, help us ask those kinds of questions about our data. Let's dive in and take a look at a specific dashboard. We've got one that I built up for FutureStack just to show a couple of things. And I'm going to whip through the widgets pretty quick, but again, I'm going to remind you that you have all have access to this. There are a couple things that that are less documented, maybe in Insights. One of those is this first widget, which is just being able to pull up the event types, showing event types for the past X number of weeks. Now, one of the things we get in support every once in a while is my data isn't there. Why isn't my data there? Or there should be data there. And this is one of the things that we use to determine, is that event type even present? Is it there or not? I should point out that if you look at the Data Explorer here, and we've got this little drop-down menu here, this drop-down menu represents the same show event types query. In fact, this drop-down is built from that exact query. And so if I change my time range here, right, maybe I move to a week ago rather than an hour ago, that's potentially updating this list of event types. It trips people up quite a bit. The default is going to be an hour, so if you've got custom events that can be spotty at times or aren't being put into the event store every hour, you may find, right, I can't query my data. It's not there. And it's just because of that hour-long default in something like the event viewer. And so when we're looking for these kinds of things, this show event types can be pretty powerful for us to quickly bring up, show me all the events that are out there. Along those lines, we've also got a key set transaction, which isn't maybe part and parcel of everybody's NRQL. Key set allows us to take a look at the attributes within one of those events. We talked a little bit yesterday in one of the Insights events about asynchronous event data or asynchronous attributes. In other words, one event can have events added to it with asynchronous attributes. We have attributes on some events, but the same event type lacks attributes on others. We don't enforce a schema for your events that says you must have these 10 fields. They must all be present. If you don't have a field present in the event as it's uploaded, it's just not there. Insight doesn't care. So going back to this ability to look at a key set transaction shows us all of the attributes for one of those. In this case, I'm looking for it from the transaction. If I change that to page view, we'd get a different list of attributes. Again, nothing up my sleeve. This is actually the same thing that we see here in Data Explorer. As you pick a different event type, we get an updated list of attributes on the right-hand side. That's literally how we build that list of attributes. We go in and look at key set for the event type that you've selected. That will bring back all of the individual fields. That same data is available down here at the bottom as we scroll through the events. So the Data Explorer tries to bring a lot of these things together to make writing NRQL easier for you. In fact, you can kind of click your way through the Data Explorer here to facet and to filter this data down. Right? I'm just faceting and filtering. So the faceting is what we call the grouping behavior on the left-hand side, and then filters show up as purple boxes. We'll see those purple boxes in other products. If you're familiar with filterable geography in the browser product or error analytics, you've seen some of the same filtering capability, and all of that is built on top of Insights. Let's see, come back to my dashboard example. Insights is getting better all the time. One of the fun ones that's been added, we've talked a lot about infrastructure. I wanted to point out another, a new visualization type for infrastructure events, the event feed. We'll see the event feed. How many people have seen the event feed in infrastructure yet? Yeah, all right, the infrastructure talk this morning. So this event feed is another visualization type. If I went in and edited this particular dashboard, we'd be able to see this new visualization type for infrastructure events, right? An infrastructure event is just an event like all the others that supports a different visualization. So we'll see that with a number of these, that they're takes on different visualizations. Faceting and filtering comes up a lot. We've got a couple of examples of different ways to filter a set of applications or filter down a particular widget into additional breakdowns, facets or filters. Let's take a look at the NRQL for this particular one. We'll maybe zoom in on that. The in clause, right? So we can select from a group of applications based on their presence in a set. Works for generally low cardinality sets, low cardinality small subsets of group, right? If I had 75 applications and I wanted to see all 75 of those applications, that's higher cardinality. And may not be appropriate. Here I've only got 3 of them, and so the in a set works pretty well to at least expose this data for me. There are a couple other ways to do a very similar query, right? One of those would be to simply facet and then add a where clause. So I think we've got a where clause in this one. I was clicked on the wrong one there. Right, so in this case, we've also grouped the apps in addition to filtering them by that in a particular group. We've also faceted that. The advantage to faceting is faceting applies this filter to other widgets. We can take this filter now and apply it to other widgets on this page, or potentially link this widget to other dashboards themselves. So a faceted query, as opposed to, let's go back to the previous example, which was a not faceted. This one was actually using the uniques, was the big one that I wanted to point out over here. This one is also faceting. The primary difference is our ability to get a list like this. So an unfaceted, here's my application list that I was thinking of. If we were to just select the unique app names from transaction as a non-faceted query, we can't use the result of this query to feed another one very easily, right? I could copy and paste this and put it into the filter box on the dashboard, but the expected user experience here is really more of the drill into effect. So by selecting uniques as opposed to faceting and filtering that facet, I lose that drop-down capability. Just something to think about as we drill in here. I'm sorry, I don't have the time up here, so I'm just going to pull my phone out, not to look at it, just so I know what time, so I don't keep you guys here too long. All right, we've got a couple other examples of filtering, including the ability to filter inside of our select statement. So rather than filtering in our where clause, we can actually use a filter function. The filter function allows us to apply filters to our results. So here we're looking at count star and then choosing to filter each one. The advantage to this is the ability to apply both filters and facets in one query. This is the infamous double facet, right? Everybody typically wants a double facet in some way, or a join. And this is the way that New Relic approximates that sort of multi-facet on one event type. Being able to include, right, both these where clauses as well as potentially faceting these results by other criteria allows us to get that multi-effect. The downside is that you can kind of get it, the filter clause is long. If you have, again, a high cardinality in that filter condition, you're going to have lots and lots of where conditions. So this builds and builds and builds into some very long NRQL queries eventually. We see some very long ones. I think that they can be difficult to write at times. And generally what we recommend in those cases is more filtering, right? An additional filter applied to some of that data that allows us to see that we can take an existing widget, select star from transaction, and filter it by these app names. Let's talk a little bit about how to filter real quick. Filtering is something that we add to a widget. You can see a couple of examples of widgets here that have our filter button enabled, allowing us to take the results of any widget and then essentially direct a click in that widget either to filter this existing dashboard or to take us to another dashboard. One of the ways to create exciting and interesting dashboards is to enable some of that drill into behavior. As humans, we like to get more detailed, right? Focus, focus, focus. And that drill into behavior becomes a pretty powerful way to create a compelling, what feels like an interactive dashboard. So don't forget about filtering. We saw some of that in the celebrity dashboards, for instance, the ability to filter on multiple things on one particular dashboard. There are other ways to apply filters. I don't want to deny the search box up at the top that also allows us to apply a filter to this box, to this entire dashboard. For instance, I can select an app name from the list here almost as easily as I could do it on a widget. I think as I sort of teach people how to use dashboards, while I appreciate the search bar, I think having a widget on the screen that's faceted by app name and allows people to click the app name as opposed to use a drop-down list of app names, it just seems more intuitive. It seems more interesting for us to actually click on an app name and filter the dashboard versus go up and type the app name in itself. In addition to single results, we've got potentially the ability to include multiple results. We saw a little bit of this in the celebrity dashboard. He had a very wide table of results. And so to do that isn't any more complicated than adding a comma between the various pieces that we want. We do have to work with aggregator functions, min, max, average, count, et cetera, in order to be consistent across our facet. But the ability to have multiple results in one query allows us to sort of do this easy comparison. What's the min? What's the max? I've got a number of other types, but along with that one, I was also going to show. I guess I don't have that one. All right, we won't show that one. In NRQL, we try to make it easy to do time series graphs. So time series becomes, right, one of those ways that NRQL is not like SQL. Adding time series to a chart allows us to see that over time. There are a couple of options with time series. A lot of us are just using time series without specifying a particular interval that we want to see, but you can actually tell the time series to show this to me in 5-minute intervals or 2-minute intervals. So not everybody's data makes sense in those sort of 1-minute intervals, especially as you get into custom events. So there are some additional pieces to time series queries that allow us to essentially group into 30-minute buckets, for instance. So if we group the last week into 30-minute buckets, we get a smoother curve. Not everybody likes a smoother curve. Too big. We do have the ability to add metric charts. One of the only caveats to metric charts, and I hate to bring this up as a caveat, but we've got the ability to move through different time ranges. In the past, we might have talked about dashboards that have multiple time views on one particular page. Show me the last day, show me the last week, show me the last month. For instance, what we hope is that the time picker eliminates some of those multiple widgets on a particular page, so that with the time picker you can easily manipulate all of the widgets on the dashboard without having to have multiple views of the same data at different time frequencies. It's another reason why we've had a number of people create multiple dashboards for that same multiple time frequency. Going fast, but trying to get it all in. Does anybody have any questions so far about what we've seen so far? Yeah. Yeah, the answer, so the question is what happens to my widgets when I select the time picker and the widgets themselves have different time ranges, right? If one said 1 week ago, this one I believe did something along those lines. The answer is that their sense clauses are all updated. So all of the widgets will show the same 30-minute, 60-minute, or even a custom time range at one time. So that notion of having count from transactions in the last day beside a widget of count from the last week, beside another widget of count from the last month, right? So I could get the trend analysis. It's not moot, but it's maybe not quite as necessary anymore with the ability to manipulate all of those widgets. You really only need one widget now, and then the ability to kind of go back and look at different time zones, time frames, not zones. People always get tripped up about writing NRQL. There's a lot of things to make writing NRQL itself easier as we think about the query bar and interacting with the query bar. A couple of little things that we often talk about. It can be hard to figure out which of the available attributes I want to actually select from as you get started with the query bar, right? So if you're just looking at a select and wondering, what do I type next, right? I think I want count star, right? That's where everybody begins, because it's an easy one to not have to get into all the rest of this stuff for. One of the tricks that we like to do as a trainer is to tell you to add the from clause. So we could add a from clause to page views, and when I go back to my select now, the IntelliSense will actually limit down that list of attributes just to that particular event type, the page view or the mobile or the transaction event type that I'd selected. So we get a better IntelliSense if we tell it which one. By default, I believe we'll get the transaction by default. Down at the bottom of the list, this isn't always obvious to everybody, there's a whole list of functions, all right? So we get a number of people who wonder what functions are available. Yes, you can read the documentation, but there's also a list of the available functions down at the bottom. We've got what we think are pretty good representative group here. It was funny, one of the developers was asking me the other day, do we ever get questions about more functions, right? Any additional functions, exponentials or additional math functions here, and so I want to put that out there, right? If you can think of other existing aggregator functions, we'd love to hear about them. We think we've got a pretty good representative sample here. Things like AppDex work with our existing tools to set thresholds and pull out individual AppDex scores for us. We've got lots of examples of funnel and filter throughout the sample dashboards that we have for you. One of the ones I did want to talk about was maybe just a slight difference between percentages and percentiles, right? Percentile seems a little strange next to percentage. If you're not a stats geek, I'm not a stats geek, but if you're not a stats geek, right, those don't necessarily make a whole lot of sense. Percentile, my layman's explanation is percentile gives you a number. I want to know the 65th percentile of something. What I'm going to get back is what is at that 65th percentile. Percentage is going to typically involve a where clause, right? So there's some sort of filter. I want to see the percentage where this value is true. Percentiles work really well with another sort of NRQL hack, if you will, and that's the NRQL alerting. Percentiles work so well with NRQL alerting that we've sort of raised percentiles to be a top-level choice within the alerting infrastructure. So you can actually use percentiles as an alert condition in addition to creating a NRQL query based on a percentile and then using that inside of your alert, right? So I can be alerted then based on a value in my app. When the 95th percentile of my users goes over a certain duration, that's when I want to be notified. Sometimes response times hide those spikes, if you will, right? We can have multiple spikes that put an average right in the middle, but belie some of the outliers. So percentile is great, and I think the use of percentile from NRQL into alerting is pretty powerful. This dashboard is pretty good. This is a page view dashboard that does a pretty good job of demonstrating, right, just our drill down behavior. We've got lots of attributes to be able to filter off on this particular dashboard. That allows me to drill into a particular operating system and maybe just want to see the IE users on, well, they're all going to be on Windows. And then what the front end and back end time is, there's a lot more to faceting and filtering here, but certainly one of the fun ones that we love to do is to get down to a little bit of what you saw in the celebrity dashboards, which is a session details, right? So we've got the ability to look at a particular session and view, right, what they're doing. Here I can pick on a particular session. This dashboard's meant to be filtered from another one, but I can still filter it down to a particular session and get the results of that user's pages in timestamp order. So essentially I can see their trail within the web application. This works well with browser data. Browser's got a nice consistent key called session. This is where we certainly encourage you guys to add additional custom attributes to the transactions that you're putting into the database, allowing you to do more filtering and grouping based on the criteria that's important to you. This is in the training account. It's 103.8287. It's in the one that the NRU training account. This one's called Training Dashboard. Oh, this one's called Session Details. I'm sorry. Let's see. There are additional fun things as we think about hacking NRQL. We've got a couple of other things that are worth showing you. One is the ability to. I lost my workflow. I had a link to a query, right? So am I still logged in? Yeah, still logged in. All right. So I've got the ability to send somebody a link to a dashboard that's already filtered here, right? This is the big key that I was going to point out, right? I've already filtered this down to the city of Portland, for instance, and that's embedded inside of that long URL at the top. So as you're working with a dashboard and we want to send this to another person, it can be as easy as copying the URL and sending them that URL. That sends them not just the dashboard, but also potentially the filters that you've applied to that dashboard as well, right? Rather than, it can be complicated to tell somebody, go to this dashboard and then filter it to Portland, where the operating system is Windows. And I don't want to deal with that explanation. I would rather send them a link, right? This is what we ask the somebody, if anybody asks support for help with a dashboard, the first thing out of their mouth is send me a link. So permalink down here at the bottom allows us to make that a permanent link, right? To give us an absolute URL that looks exactly like the one in the URL bar. We can use NRQL querying from multiple places. One of those places that we can query from is something like a sheet, and my little zoom tool in Google Sheets is not working well here. So if I could make this bigger, I would. We can talk about this later. But this is a small Sheets document that essentially executes NRQL queries. We get a lot of questions about exporting data, all right? And so there are sort of a couple of different ways to get data out of Insights. One of those is something along this lines where we're executing NRQL queries. We can develop spark lines based on those NRQL queries, right? This spark line is fed from data that's populated based on a NRQL query, right? So I can take the results of my NRQL query and then apply some additional logic inside of Excel or Sheets to begin to crunch the numbers even more. How does it work? Yeah, so the short answer how it works is essentially Insights has a query API to do this, and that query API is visible on the Manage Data tab down here. We went and looked at the API keys. We've got an example of what the curl statement to execute an Insights query and get the results looks like. And we can actually copy and paste that. Yeah, it's almost that close. There's a little bit of JavaScript inside of Sheets to actually execute the curl request, but very close. Yeah, it's essentially taking this and then applying your own key to it, filling in the key, and dealing with, that key can be sensitive. I don't know that I would give everybody the sheet. No, you can't. So the dashboard itself doesn't support that, but in this case, so the question is from any dashboard, can I generate a curl statement? And I guess the way I would answer that is that the curl statement works with any query you want to execute. So dashboards are collections of queries, and this query syntax allows you to execute those queries and essentially build, in a way, in Sheets, what you're doing is building your own dashboard because there's additional analysis that you want to apply to it. It is in JSON format. Yeah, so it'll come back as... is there a limitation on the time frame for the API? Yeah. So the question is, can I just export all the detailed data out and do my own analysis on it? It is oddly possible. You have to do it in chunks, unfortunately. There is a hard limit of about 1,000 rows that come back from any query. So if I did a select star from transaction, the maximum number of rows that I'm going to get back from that is 1,000. So now I can play with my time zone, my time frame, and how quickly data is coming in. To pull that out. I would encourage, I always encourage people, right? Leave the data where it is. Use the aggregation. Run some queries, right, against your data and compare how quickly we can filter and facet in Insights versus how quickly we could do that in something like Excel. It's amazing, right? It's stunning, and that's the point. Insights is very good at doing this aggregation ahead of time. And so I encourage people to look at the aggregate numbers, right? Look at the average over a day or the average over a month, for instance. That's a much smaller number of values that you get out of a query than give me all 100,000 rows and then I'll average it once I get it. So yes, you can. It's just very difficult. And it sort of it defeats the purpose of having a SaaS-based tool that's supposed to be doing all that work for you. Yep. Thanks. This one might be on.
Sorry, on the, can we turn that on?
See back there?
Yeah, sorry. So on the question of NRQL and spreadsheets, sorry, I'm a product manager for APM. I wanted to respond to that question. So we actually have instructions on how to install scripts with Google Sheets. It's in GitHub to suck that data in. We use that ourselves for different sort of reporting needs and stuff, and I'm sure Michael can share that.
I didn't want to share. I didn't want to share that dashboard. We've got some great dashboards in Sheets that are massive. I was thinking about doing those, but the lawyers don't like that. But we have massive sheets. They're really the spark lines. We can share it. All right. So we'll get you guys connected later after the show. It's funny. I bring this up because Sheets has been sort of my go-to explanation for how to deal with a lot of this for a while, but it's funny, of course, because we can. Let's see if I can get a good example here. We've got a CSV button, right? So if you would like to take the results from a NRQL query and export it to something like Sheets, and you want that data or this data, right, whatever's coming back, it's that easy. It's one button click, and I'm done. So yeah, we actually used to talk quite a bit about pulling it into Sheets and then doing more analysis, but I think having a CSV button and the ability to export is going to solve a lot of those problems for a number of people. Last but not least, I certainly want to. I can't not point out at least a little bit with. Let's go to our training account here, and that is the ability to create insights queries from all kinds of things. Right? If we went over to infrastructure and pulled up one of their charts in infrastructure, we can view this chart in Insights and essentially look at the NRQL that was used to generate that chart. Right? So It's not even though I have to figure this out anymore. I just pin that chart to Insights and then begin modifying. Oh, I want that chart, but I want to filter it by X. So start here, add your where clause to this rather than try to build it up. I don't want to dissuade anybody. I think the IntelliSense is awesome as you try to build a query up. But there are some easy ways to learn, including looking at some of the training dashboards that we have, how those operate, and then taking those ideas and using them as your own. Along those lines, I'm full of fun things to talk about today, is the ability to copy a dashboard, right? Another requested feature we've had. Get to a fast dashboard here, right? So we've now got a new button. This is one of the #1 questions we get in training, hands down about Insights. I love that. How do I get a copy of that? And this is the answer. I don't know why my dashboard's taking some time here, but there it goes. And this is the answer that it does allow you to copy a dashboard. In this case, it will copy it within the account. I feel pretty confident from talking to the product managers and everyone else at New Relic that, yes, we are looking to expand that to allow you to copy dashboards between different accounts. For instance, as the next extension of this particular feature, but we can copy this dashboard. This is great for having a wonderful production dashboard that's visible to you, but you can't modify it. Oh, that'd be awesome if I could just add one thing to it. That's where copying dashboards is going to be incredible. The ability to take a dashboard that we want to put up on a monitor somewhere, make a copy of that for some instant analysis, get all of those widgets, add the ones that we want, and then promote that potentially to a first-class citizen at some point later on. It is easy if you do find a particular widget. We get this question every once in a while too. Rather than copying the whole dashboard, I just like that widget. That one is the coolest, and I really wish I could put that on my own dashboard. And generally, what we tell you, just run the query, and we'll have the ability to move that to a different dashboard. Right? So a lot of people assume once they're on a particular dashboard that any changes that they're doing are going to edit that dashboard. Right? Ooh, that's the production dashboard. I don't want to mess with that one. We can pull up their NRQL query, execute it, and then move it to a dashboard that we have a little bit more control over to change some of the filter criteria, manipulate it a little bit more. Maybe I like that query. I just want to change it a little bit, and I don't want to mess up their dashboard. So look at their dashboard, click on this small icon in the upper right-hand corner, right? Edit the NRQL, and then run it. And that is the quickest way to sort of move one widget from one dashboard to another dashboard. Although, if you really like the dashboard, I would say copy it now. So that's certainly new. See, any good time to stop for questions? Got about 5 minutes left. Ooh, yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah, that's a good question. So the question is, what are these things? It's good. They're fun and whimsical, and they're meant to help us identify dashboards at a glance, right? So if we use some consistent symbology, for instance, for ops dashboards versus executive dashboards, we could sort of quickly use that to do it. You can do it with a good naming convention too. We see that a lot. Dash overview or dash executive is, sorry about the auto update there, is trying to do much of the same thing. So it's a unique identifier that's easy to spot from a dashboard overview page. Yeah, we get a bunch of people caught up in that one. As you get into large numbers of dashboards, I'd encourage you to use things like the filter box as a way to manage large volumes of dashboards. Support's favorite trick, of course, is the popular dashboards. We love to go in and look at the ones that you guys are looking at, because those are probably the most meaningful in your account. Right? That's the one that has the most eyeballs, and there's some value in that, right? If there are lots of people looking at that dashboard, it must be important. That's certainly the hope. Dashboards do have different visibility. It's worth talking about the visibility of a dashboard. Let's see if we can go in and pull one of these up. So I can make this dashboard private to me. It's not our favorite thing. We like to share here at New Relic, and we think that sharing dashboards is an excellent way to get other people to learn how to use an analogy, fish for themselves, right? As opposed to giving them the fish, by allowing them to see the dashboards that the devs are using or the ops team are using. It can allow them to come up with some creative ways to use that data. And that tends to be one of the natural ways that insights dashboards progress through an organization. Is we get some use out of it within a small team. That team begins to show some other people, and they find new ways to use that data that personalize it to them. So you can make dashboards private, but we don't recommend it. Last but not least, we've got infrastructure in here, and so what you're seeing in Insights is a dashboard that gets created as we add some of the existing, some of the new integrations into infrastructure. So in this case, we've got EC2 instances running our pet clinic application in the NRU training account here. And that integration with EC2 inside of infrastructure auto-created this particular dashboard for me. So this one wasn't built up. It was added as a part of that infrastructure product being added. And if you read between the lines here, right, what this means is that there's an API for building dashboards that some of the New Relic teams have access to, and that, you know, another requested feature is that ability to programmatically create a dashboard, right? As I add a new customer, I want to give them a dedicated dashboard for them to look at, and I want to build that up programmatically based on some kind of template. So I don't have any release dates for you, but certainly talk to the product manager, Henry, about it. It's something certainly that we recognize and are going for our own needs, and we think that being able to programmatically create dashboards will help you as well in the future. I think I'm out of time. If you have more questions, please feel free to come talk to me after the session. I'm available during lunch. And if you're not in the NRU training account and able to see these, it takes about a minute to get you added into the account. It's just an email address, and we'll get you to take a look. So thanks for coming.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael.